I haven't had as much time as I would hope to prepare for this, so there's no demo, sorry. Had a busy week at work. My presentation will be in English because my Norwegian is not very good yet, sorry. If I speak too quickly, throw something at me or raise your hand. If you've got a question, raise your hand. I don't mind answering questions. Who here has written stuff in PHP? I haven't at all, ever, thankfully. But we'll get to that. So, RFI, LFI vulnerabilities and PHP-shells leads to compromised owned servers. Yeah. That's the title of this talk. It's long-winded. I don't really mind that it's long-winded. Very important slide about me. Come on. So where did this all start? Where did all of this stuff come from? I'm not talking about anything new. It's been around for years. This is old stuff. Does everyone know what I'm talking about today? I'm sure most of you guys do in the pen testing world, you do. Yeah, so everyone knows what I'm talking about, so I can go home now.
PHP-shells, but not the other part.
Huh?
Yeah, the topic was...
I'm more interested in the PHP shells because that's more fun to me than the actual vulnerabilities, but anyway. So I used to work for a bank, which made me do this all day. It wasn't great. My task at the bank was to respond to phishing emails to clients within the bank. So yes, this is a phishing email. If they're trying to get your credentials, I'll get the site taken down. Go to the takedown provider, please take down this phishing site, blah, 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 black hole, the DNS, all that sort of crap. This sort of stuff. This was a really, you can't really see that, sorry. This is a really lazy fish. He wrote it all in the subject line, so that the content of the actual email. Where's my cursor? Know where it is. No, there it is. No, it's gone. Shit. Okay. Subject up here. All of it's in the subject. The fish is in the subject. Worst fishing guy ever. Anyway, sorry. This is a bit of a better example. So Kalahari is like Amazon but for Africa. So you can buy books and shit. This was an email sent. You can see Kalahari notifications. You can't really see it because it's all in yellow, but it's click here to go to kalahari.com, except it goes to a different site, yourster.ru, https kalahari.com/accounts, where there is a phishing kit. Phishing kit looks kind of like this. This was a really good one that targeted all 4 banks in South Africa. You plug in your details, your account details, username, password, blah, 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 and it gets sent off to an email to the phishing guys who then log into your bank, steal your money. Yay, phishing, steal all the monies. Yeah. So, local file includes. That was kind of an introduction to where I'm going. My talks aren't very good because I go on tangents and I lose my track and then bad things happen. Anyway.
We have all weekend food.
Do you?
Yeah.
Awesome. Can I talk really slowly and like go for like some food and come back? And,
Well, if you don't mind us hanging along while we get the food and
not at all.
talking.
Not at all. I can talk really slowly, whatever. So the phishing kits are part of the problem, but the way that they get onto the server is, in my experience, a couple of ways. Local file includes and remote file includes, which I'll talk about in a couple of slides. So if you've written PHP code, everyone see that. You've got your example.com, you've got your fancy include.php file, which will then include a local file on that web server, like blah.php or about.php, which will then render the page all fancy and nice and pretty. But what happens if you don't write that code correctly? And you can do something like that, which you can't see at all. Actually, see if I can. No, of course I can't, because this is mountain line, and mountain line is shit. Basically, what that is something that looks like that. So instead of going to blah.php, it goes //, breaks out of the web server root, and then goes to /etc password. So that's a combination of local file includes, because you're including a local file on the web server, but also directory transversal attack, in that you're breaking out of the web server root and you're going to something on the local file system. What that looks like in real life is that, which is completely incomprehensible. That's fucking great. Ruined. What that is Nintendo.com, the web server hosting Nintendo.com, the user account list.
Oh my.
I can show it to you on my screen here. It looks a lot better.
This is actually.
This was
When
maybe
was this?
3 or 4 months ago, so it was fairly recent.
Holy crap.
So basically, Nintendo.com CSS pages, blah 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 blah, // etc/ password file list. That's a local file include. Really basic. You can include any local files, on the web server, and then it gets rendered to the web page like this, and you can have happy fun times. It's not really that useful because you can only really get to files that the web server has permission to see. So generally, the Apache web server runs as www-data or nobody or some other user. If it runs as root, you should be taken outside and shot, because then you can read every single file on the file system, and that happens. Local file includes. Are we happy? Yes. This is going to be a really short talk. Fantastic. Remote file includes. Same kind of thing. Yes.
Question about local file includes.
Yes.
What kind of files would you consider interesting to ask for? Like the password file is fair
Password
enough,
file.
but you won't get the shadow file.
No, you won't.
So any other useful things that might be like.
I would use something like sameip.org and find out what other web servers are hosted on that box. What other websites, not web servers, idiot. What other websites are hosted on the box, and then look for config.php or config-inc.php, like configuration files, which would generally contain database credentials, because everyone stores their database credentials in the clear and without encrypting the password. That sort of stuff. So then you know what database files are included.
Still quite nasty, even if like your example here isn't very useful.
The password file is useful because it means that if it has SSH open, I have a valid list of users that I can brute force accounts with.
Right, that's fair, yeah.
And then you just get a decent word list for your passwords, and just set something like one of the SSH brute forces against it. If it's maybe hosting mail, you can do it with mail. It depends on the web server. So, answer your question?
I'm just thinking.
Yeah.
Often you can combine it with some other type of thingy. For instance, if Nintendo had a profile page, or someone might register or upload pictures or whatever, you can upload some kind of script and then use LFI to execute that script and make it do whatever you want, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's if they've got a file upload vulnerability where you can upload an image, except it's not an image, it's a PHP file.
Exactly.
And then you reference the PHP file, you get a nice remote shell, which is kind of where I'm going.
Okay. Cool. Sorry.
But you reminded me of that, thanks, because I would have completely forgotten that, and blah blah blah. So remote file includes the same kind of thing. You see lots of stuff like this. I don't really know where this came from. Remote file includes where my link was to this page, but whatever. So this is Standard Bank's login page, except you can't see the top because it's a really bad projector, or it's really high resolution, whatever. But while I was doing the phishing stuff, what was happening was you would get a page like this, a phishing page. But how would they get that stuff up there? It's a phishing kit that you can buy, or that the guys steal, whatever. They're a bunch of phishers, who really cares? So generally they would use a remote file include to find a vulnerability or exploit a vulnerability in the web server, which I'm getting to. I go back and forth. If anyone is not following, which I'm not even following me at the moment, I understand. Can't see that either, so let's get through that. But this is really what I'm talking about. So they will find a page within the web server that is vulnerable to remote file includes, and then host this. This is just a one-page PHP shell somewhere else. But then, if we look at go back a few slides. Instead of doing .. they would replace the .. with http colon blah 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 blah, their server, and then that page. And then the local Apache web server would pull that, wouldn't pull it, but would render that remote file. In this case, our lovely PHP-shell of doom would render that file on the local web server. And as you can not see at all, because it's really bad, it would give you remote access to that server, so you could then upload files, download files, do all that sort of fun stuff. I've got a couple of examples here. Let me actually don't do what I'm about to do, which is really silly. If I can find my cursor, there it is. I promise you know what I'm talking about. Let's see if I can make this a bit bigger. So this is a PHP shell which is hosted locally on my web server. Please don't go to it now. You have the ability to upload and download files to my web server. But
What was the link?
there it is up there, you can go to it now if you want. But the idea is that they would attack the web server using this PHP file but hosted locally. So as you can see, it gives you lots of fun information about the server, what it's running, Ubuntu, what sort of PHP variables are enabled, the path, so you can see my full path to my web server. You can do things like execute commands, so who am I? This is a really dumb idea. Do what I say, not what I do. And you can see who am I, you can run commands, you can search for stuff, you can upload files. So I could then upload, as he mentioned, another script which would maybe give me local file shell access, whatever. It's basically a pretty web front end to a remote web server. Fantastic. So all I would do here is I would create a local interpreter. I know what you're doing in the back there, being very quiet, so we'll just do this quickly. I would create a local interpreter shell, and I would use that to call back to another server and get an actual physical shell to that to my server. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
You're with me.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this is what I ended up finding a lot in my phishing research work stuff. They would hack the site, and then you'd find one of these, which the phishing guys would use to upload their zip files, unzipped files, and you'd get a nice, pretty phishing site. Awesome. So what this is the PHP shell itself. Let me see if it opens. My laptop crashed. Bear with me while I open this up. So if I leave the Bluetooth on with this laptop, it crashes, like if it goes to sleep. So. So I'm just trying to find a good example here for you. So this is all the file already is. If you can see that at the top there. You can't because this is. So this was called images.php on the web server. Except it's just one gigantic big file of garbage. They've obfuscated the code, and they're just using gzip deflate or inflate. They gzip encoding, compressing it, and then base64 encoding it. So when the web server goes here, it'll inflate it and then decode it, and you'll get something that looks kind of like. Let's try and find a good example here. Yes, that's the one. More, and you'll get your actual PHP code that runs all the pretty stuff in the web front end. And again, this would allow you to take remote control of that server. Fantastic. This is another example. They're all pretty much the same. There's a number of families that I've found. The most common one that I've seen is C99, which is this one here. And all they do is they reskin it, make it look a bit different, and then call it like the Bloggers edition or the WordPress edition, and then they sell it. Or they ask you not kindly in the source code not to publish it and that sort of crap. But basically, this is what it all boils down to. Here's another example of the code which you can't see because of the thingy. It's bad. So PHP-shells, the basic functionality behind them is to allow the attackers to browse the local file system, bless you, upload and download files. The problem is that you're going to be limited to the user that Apache is running as I said, but it doesn't stop you from uploading something like Interpreter or like a custom bit of Perl or something like that to the server, and then actually executing that to call back to your server. The local listening shells. You can send emails, you can do brute force attacks in the local MySQL database, all that sort of stuff. There's a couple of fun hidden extras that I found. It calls home. A number of these scripts that I've looked at actually called home. So when you use the script, it would send mails off to the guy who wrote the script in the background, because a lot of the code is actually obfuscated, and generally the guys who are using these scripts aren't the sharpest tools in the shed, so they just upload them and they use them. They're like, look how cool I am, mom, I hacked the planet. Except that the shell itself is sending mails to, or sending pings, or whatever the case is, back to the guy who wrote it, or the group who owns the shell, and then they have the access details to your server, or the hacked server, which is now their server, because it's no longer your server because it's been hacked. With me? Yes. So there's no demo. Sorry. This machine is very ill and it's just not working at all. So the basic premise is you've got a really badly written PHP website like that one, and a PHP shell like this, which gives you that, which you can't see either because the screen is really bad. But it basically means this. Sadness. So the moral of the story is you need to write good code. If you're writing PHP code, at least audit your code. Go through it, or have somebody else audit it if you can, like these guys here who pen test shit all day. Have somebody hacksaw the code for you, so actually run scripts or just test the code as much as you can. Trust no one. And the cake is a lie.
Oh.
And because I can, boobies.
Wouldn't it be a good start to say turn off all kind of file inclusion features?
Oh yeah. I know that PHP did that a while back. There is a setting in the php.ini which does stop that. I forget what it's called, but it is there. I don't know if it's on by default. It's probably on by default knowing PHP. It's not exactly the most secure piece of code ever, but there are ways to stop it. But it doesn't really help with certain vulnerabilities, like having on and off.
What kind of you're thinking about where it doesn't help?
I have no idea. Probably the local file include stuff, because I think the setting only really stops the PHP code from making HTTP requests out. I don't know if it stops the actual local file includes. So it'll probably stop the remote file include stuff, but you'd find with the way, this is my opinion and it's completely uneducated, with the way that web applications and stuff are written these days, you find that the devs who aren't that sharp security-wise, they write great code that does all these awesome things. But they want to be able to pull stuff from multiple sources that aren't on the local server. That's the problem. They're going to say, I want to include this video from this side over here, that side over there, and so they're going to demand that insecure setting is turned on, because otherwise the site's not going to work. So the option is to turn on the server is open to these, vulnerabilities and that sort of stuff, and then you get owned and then, yeah. What I was hoping to do was, there's a nice little application called Down Vulnerable Web App, which has a bunch of vulnerable PHP code and stuff. I was hoping to show you how the actual, how I would go from a remote file include to actually getting root on the server, but I can't because Betsy here is very temperamental and is not doing too well. Sorry. Are there any other questions? Because I've actually finished. I told you it was going to be short.